Do you love books that inspire kindness, creativity, and courage? Join us as we dive into the literary world of award-winning author Diann Floyd Boehm. She's known for her children's books and young adult historical fiction. Diann crafts stories that empower readers to embrace imagination and live with purpose. So today we'll explore her journey, her creative process, and her latest release, Ruby Takes Chicago. Authors like you've never heard them before, only on Books with Bridgetti.
Introducing Books with Bridgetti, a lineup of industry experts, award-winning authors and talented indie authors. Buckle up for an unparalleled journey with us. Meet exceptional authors celebrated globally for their captivating narratives. Our authors craft imaginative stories that stay etched in your mind long after the final page. It's not just stories, it's lingering experiences that stay etched in your mind. Our authors share the inspirations that create mesmerizing page-turning stories. Journeys that embody resilience, that turn setbacks into stepping stones, rejections that spark growth, and hurdles that become a catalyst for creativity. From dramas, mysteries, fantasies, children's stories to reality stories, join us as we delve into the inspiration behind the story, discover how authors breathe life into characters, and meticulously craft plots that keep you turning the page. But wait, there's more. We share stories from indie authors as well as Amazon and New York Times best-selling authors. Get ready for an interview that'll have you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned. Join us only on Books with Bridgetti.
If you've just joined us, then welcome to Books with Bridgetti. Our live stream is made possible by Creative Edge, StreamYard, and BeLive Media. In today's show, we're going to be talking to the amazing Diann Floyd Boehm. She is an award-winning international author who writes children's books and young adult historical fiction. Diann's stories encourage readers to embrace imagination and focus on kindness, self-love, and peace. Diann's books include Rise, A Girl's Struggle for More, and the sequel we're going to be talking about today, Ruby Takes Chicago, and both those books are available on Amazon. Diann is a former educator with a Bachelor of Education from the George Mason University. She's lived globally and performed in musical theatre productions. Diann currently co-hosts the UK News and Culture Show on USA Global TV and radio. And so without any further ado, please help me welcome Diann to the show.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Diann, it's wonderful to have you back on Books with Bridgetti. Always such an absolute delight. And you know, I always say the time goes by so quickly. So I'm going to jump right in because there's just so much things I want to ask you about your journey and the book so that the viewers can get to know you just a little bit better. And I'm going to jump off by asking you, what was the inspiration behind Ruby Takes Chicago? And does it build on the story of Rise, or is it two distinct, separate stories?
Excellent question. So, first of all, my grandmother, of course, is the inspiration where the story is. So that makes it even more exciting because she was such a beautiful inspiration in my own life. I had such great feedback with Rise that people were saying, well, what happened to Ruby next? And the publisher's like, I told you, you better have had that story ready. So I had been working on it in the background, but I thought, oh, I don't know, it's my first one, but it was yay, people loved it. So I was like totally inspired and thank everybody for reading it. And so, no, they go together. You certainly could start with Ruby Takes Chicago, but then you'd be having anchoring to or hunger to want to go and read the first story. So I lost your voice.
Thanks for giving us the context to start off the conversation. Now, Ruby faces significant challenges as a woman pursuing a career in the 1920s.
That's
How
right.
do you bring those struggles to life in the story?
Another excellent question. I really did so much research. Yes, I knew things from what my grandma would tell me, but grandmas aren't going to tell you everything, and plus you'd be so bored. And then I was blessed to have my mama enrich the stories about grandma as an adult. And I'm like, man, I really want to wake her up. But actually, when I had to really study what was going on in Chicago at that time, and then in the whole US historically, I was just amazed. And I actually kept going down different rabbit holes just because I was so intrigued. And so by all this research, that truly enabled me to thread the story together. Women had it rough.
They did. And things, thankfully things have changed just a little bit,
Yes.
which is great. And hopefully the transformation just keeps going. Now, your books often focus on themes such as kindness, imagination, and resilience. How do you go about weaving these into your storytelling?
So in children's books, it seems to be a little bit easier. In dealing with Ruby Takes Chicago, I wanted that to come through too. So for my readers who, and possibly new readers, thanks to you, I want you to know that life was so simple in the United States back then. And so you really are time traveling. And also, when you think of the 1920s, we think of the roaring times and everybody's great and wealthy and so forth. But that's not the case. So I'm going to take you back into time, and you're going to step back and go, wow, women were so different. Yes, they wanted to go to school. They wanted to work, but they had to imagine how they can make it happen. So I put that in there. And I try to step into my grandmother's shoes and read other women and their thought process as they try to work through a man's world in those days. But you might find this boring because there's no cussing. There's just sweetness and light, because that's where my grandmother was and the way she was brought up. So it's just a very simple, beautiful story.
I absolutely love that your stories are fun but clean, just enjoyable, family friendly. I really love that about your stories. How does your background in education influence your approach to writing? Does it influence it?
Oh, yes, it does. I feel, I never dreamed I'd be a writer. Storytellers from the beginning, whether I was singing at 10 years old on stage, all through now different types of storytelling. And then when I decided to put it to my stories to print, well, many of the stories were stories I told to children when I was teaching them, or even to my 8th graders, just to bring us in, because I wanted my classroom to be a family and us to work together. And so understanding where kids' mindsets are is important, and how I'm able to write the story and know that, okay, I'm going to reach them, and understanding their vocabulary, and make sure I connect with them. So education has really helped me in that as well. And also, just one more real quick thing is that being on stage and being in musicals or different types of theater works totally helps you too with storytelling, because you have to study that character, you have to study that time period, and so it makes me feel real comfortable in writing.
Well, it feels like you almost knew what my next question is.
Oh, well, good.
So my next question was going to be, what role does historical research play in shaping your young adult historical fiction?
There's so many different roles they can play, but for me personally, I truly had to I spent many, many, many hours researching before I would maybe do one little section of the story. The history has to be correct when you write a historical fiction, or people are just going to put it down and go, this lady didn't know what she's talking about, because everybody really wants to step into that time period, because that's why they enjoy historical fiction. Or maybe they're starting historical fiction for the first time and they want to make sure they're going to time travel correctly. I hope that answers your question. I get carried away.
No, it absolutely does. And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot with the next question.
Okay.
But could you share a personal connection or a memory that you feel influenced Ruby's character or journey?
Oh, wow. There's so many things. My grandma's journey. First of all, I really want to tell you, she was to me, she was a saint, because she helped so many people once. She was the kind of person, and thanks to her parents, she was the kind of person that you always gave back to the world. And so she taught my mama and my aunt that, and then mama and daddy passed that to us. The thing I can tell you, I know a good one. I was my mama used to say I had big ears because I always was listening. Mama would think she'd be in grandma's room and she'd be having a great time, but she'd forget that I was the little girl that she couldn't see sitting at the bottom of the bed.
And listening.
Yeah, listening. And I heard my mama say, that Diann, I don't know what I'm going to do with her. She is so stubborn. And I heard my grandma say, Mabel, she's not stubborn. She's just determined. And I thought, I don't know what that means, but okay.
It sounds good. Thank you, Grandma.
So later on, when Mama found out I was listening, she goes, oh, such big ears. And so I privately asked Grandma later in life, Grandma, do you remember that incident? She goes, oh, yes. And I go, so what do you think? She goes, Diann, when you want something and you really want it, you have to have determination and you have to have fire in the gut, which is something my mama would always say as well. And then she would explain. She goes, you're going to knock down, you're going to fall, just get up and do it again if you're really passionate about it. And that's determination. And that's what I learned from her, because that's what she did when she went to Chicago and left that small town that she grew up in. That takes guts.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, I really love that story. I'm glad I asked you.
I'm glad I remember. There's so many stories. I'm glad I pulled that one out of the hat.
Well, I think that one was just perfect. Now, Ruby Takes Chicago touches on a few very pivotal moments in history, such as women's rights marches and prohibition. What parallels do you see with modern society?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. And living in so many different countries and knowing the rules that happen in some countries they don't. So, for example, drinking, obviously in the States we can drink, but hopefully we don't get drunk because you might hurt someone. In other countries, drinking is totally not allowed. And so I've been into countries where people are making their own booze, and so those countries won't be mentioned anyway. So there's definitely a parallel there. The other thing is that living in other countries where women are still fighting for their rights, for even just to be able to drive, there's still countries where women have to only stay at home. That's their domain, period, end of story. And there's nothing wrong with that. So anyone listening there, I loved motherhood and I loved my moments at home. But I had the freedom to make the choice that I also wanted to go to school and work. And a lot of places still don't have that freedom. And that can happen maybe in the States where you've happened to have married someone who is very much controlling and says this is where you belong. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the States, because it can happen anywhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Talking, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your writing techniques. What techniques do you use, especially for if there is any new authors sitting out there, or and want to learn from you, because you're a very accomplished author. What techniques do you use to make historical settings relatable to your young readers?
Wow. I was all ready for everything except for when you said historical settings. So, that is such a great question. I don't know. I just step into that world. And for those people who are listening and you're thinking about writing, you want to write, I actually love to inspire young people, or of any age. As far as I'm concerned, 328 is young, because I hope I'm blessed to live to the 300 and do a lot to the world in goodness and kindness. But what I do is I'll put on music from that time period. I'll even go to the antique store and buy some dresses or slips or something that just resonates with me. And I'll have it, in different parts in this room, because this is where the magic happens. And I can just enter that world, or imagine putting that slip on or that petticoat. And that helps me think about what I've learned, what I've read, and how I can become that character. So I approach everything kind of the way I do when I go on stage, through truthfulness. Know where you are, know your setting, believe in that setting, live that setting, and you will be truthful for your character. Does that make sense?
I love that. I absolutely love your answer. Now, before we went live with the show, we talked a little bit about you living in different countries in different parts of the world. Can you tell us where you lived, and how living in different parts of the world shaped your creative perspective?
Oh, sure, I'll be happy to. But I'm also going to start with something that you'll think is funny. So, for everyone listening, I'm a Texas girl, and everything takes place in Texas. And I love Texas with all my heart. My family is from Oklahoma, and my daddy's family, and part of my mama's. And so for Thanksgiving, we'd go up there, and it would be a whole different world, because back then, the corporations didn't take over the world. So you knew you were in a different state just by the way people dress, the accent, et cetera, et cetera. But when my husband, who's a diplomat at the time, moved me to the Virginia, I thought I hit a whole different world. The rules were different, parking was different, taxes were different. And I remember, and I had a very thick Texas accent at the time, so I'll put that on for you a moment. And I called my daddy to see how things are going. And he says, well, Shug, how are things going? And I said, oh, Daddy, this is like living in a different world. These people are so, so different. Why, did you know they make you pay for parking? So I just want you to know it can happen in your own country. But I lived in the Philippines for 3 years. I had my first daughter there. And loved every minute of it. The Filipinos are some of the most beautiful people on this planet. And, I think when they're born, every single one has a musical gene because they can all sing and dance. It's just incredible. And I had a chance to teach there, to perform at the National Theater, and it was just magical. And study the customs, visit a lot of places. Many of my Filipino friends today will say, I haven't even been to those islands. So I feel very blessed to have done that. And then I spent 14 years in the UAE. We lived in Dubai. We also would go to Saudi Arabia. My husband at that time was an attorney, and he helped Fulbright and Jaworski open 2 law firms in Dubai and Saudi Arabia. And that enabled me to do a lot of humanitarian work in places mostly in Africa. So that was pretty exciting too. And that gave me such an opening to grow as a human, as I was sharing backstage, to love different cultures, to respect different cultures. I had this eagerness to learn and understand, so that when I came back to the States, I could share some of that with others and help them grow in the light.
Wow, it really does broaden your horizons, and you've lived in the most wonderful countries. And love the experiences, and thank you for sharing some of those experiences with us. Now, just touching on a previous question I asked you, what advice would you give to an aspiring author who wants to write historical fiction?
Write every single day, even if it's just a sentence. And feel free to email me and tell me roadblocks or whatever, but write. The other thing is, pick a time period that you really are interested in. It hasn't to be a time that you love right now, but maybe one that you're very much interested in, and then just start studying it. Find a character that you enjoy reading about. So, for example, let's just say that, for example, one of my great-great-grandfathers accidentally killed, if you can imagine, one of the kings in the United Kingdom, and it changed history. And so, what if you went and learned about Walter de Terrell, and you studied that, and then what happened to him, and where did he go after it was a total accident, because he's out with his cousins, and they are supposed to be shooting deer, but the arrow goes somewhere else. And there's a book called The Arrow about that. But pick something that you're really interested in. And so I'm sharing with you Walter de Terrell because that comes to mind. And then create a story. So someone did do that, and we have Robin Hood. So you never can tell what you might come up with.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Thanks for sharing that. Now you write both for children and young adult audiences. How do you balance the 2 different spectrums?
That's another really good question. So I mostly write for children. I feel so comfortable there because of all my time of teaching and motherhood. But then I get these messages, like I did for Rise, after being in different schools in different countries, and knowing that there is a commonality, but also a need to inspire older kiddos to believe in dreams and to imagine. And that's what that book's all about. And so my mind actually has been really, for almost a year, and I've been writing ideas down because I know there's another story, but I really want to make it clean and pure, because I really think young kids don't need to read these stories that are so filled with what they can't imagine. And I'm referring to puppy love. And so I just have this anchoring to really, or a need to write a story that's just pure, and bring kids back to going, my gosh, I like that you wait till the third date before you let a guy give you a smack.
Oh my goodness. Diana, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but
No.
do you have an instance or a reaction from a young reader that was memorable to you?
Oh, yes. For children's books, yes. But since we're an absolute lot, especially from parents emailing me and telling me different things, like in Charlie, and how I've helped them really talk about their ancestry and kids, so forth. But for Ruby, I'll get a couple of messages, or I've received a couple of messages saying, A, thank you for such a clean story, and B, kids going, I didn't really realize that life was so different from New York compared to Oklahoma. I just thought everything was exactly the same. And so another one was that transition people were going through in the 1920s with technology, I like to talk with my hands, from horse and buggy to cars. And so I meshed that in there, and I'll receive a message saying, wow, this made me really want to learn more about how people have made that transition, because I wrote some funny things in there about that.
I really love that. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. How delightful.
Mm.
How did you stay motivated when you're writing? Do what does your typical day look like, or your typical writing day look like? Do you have a set routine or method?
No, I don't. Most of the time I wake up in the middle of the night and write. And my husband's like, oh my gosh, there she goes again. But, I would like to say that I'm one of these writers. I would like to say I'm one of these writers that writes every single day, but I'm not. I'm one of these people who walk or sing or I'm doing something, but my brain is always percolating something else going on. And then all of a sudden it kicks in what I want to do. And then I start writing. And I'm the type of writer that just writes and writes and writes and writes. And then I put the pen down and then I read it. And then it's time to go organize and edit. So that's the type of writer I am. And so that's why I tell everybody just write.
I now totally understand that. Have you ever faced any challenges as an author, and what did you do to overcome it?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, yes. First of all, lots of no's, lots and lots of no's. And, but what did my grandma say to do? Determination, right? And so I powered on, because I believed in my heart that the stories needed to be told and they would reach and help somebody and inspire them, even if it just makes them giggle, right? That's lovely, right? The other thing is editing. Yeah. The other is editing. Editing is very difficult for me, and I'm so grateful for various tools that are out there that help us. But I also believe that, and I've learned through time, that there's nothing wrong with having 10 or 20 edits. That means you're just going to enrich the story. And trust me, there will come a time that you'll go, okay, it's done. It's done. But as far as hard times, yeah. And there's nothing worse than having your publisher come back and go, oh my gosh, did you organize this at all? Oh my gosh, why are you rambling? Oh my gosh, do we have to continue with this saga over here when you totally left out this character? And so, yay, I'm glad there's people there, because you become so immersed into your story that you sometimes lose sight. And so yay for publishers and editors who, bring you back in.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Talking about that, how do you know when your book is done. Like it's done. This needs to be published now.
Well, I mostly wait for the publisher to tell me it's done. So, and then I'm like, praise God. But no, they're like, a moment will come and say, okay, you've reached your purpose. Put the pen down and send it. And then when the publisher finally says, okay, it's done, then you're like, oh my stars, I did it. And it's a wonderful moment,
Oh my goodness. Diann, won't you hold up the book for a moment and just show people the cover of Ruby
Yes.
Takes Chicago, and talk a little bit about what message you hope readers will take away from Ruby's journey.
Sure. So everyone, this is Ruby when she was actually in Chicago. And just that alone, if you see what she looked like for Rise, super long hair, though it's put up, she really turned into a young woman there. And what I want readers to take from this story, is that here was a young girl, and she traveled by train, which is how they traveled back then, by herself to a brand new city to make and go for her dreams. And if a young girl who was born in 1904 and in the 1920s goes by herself to a brand new state, town, so totally different from the small town she came from, and would pound on different doors until she got a job. Not the job that she knew her background for her education was for, but any kind of job, and knew that's okay, one step at a time, but I'm going to work towards my goal until she did it. And she would reach obstacle after obstacle with everything going on historically, but she made it happen. And so I just feel like for all of us today, we need a character, a person that was a real person to inspire us to go after our dreams. That's what life is. It's a journey, as people say, and you're going to run into walls. Okay, what did I learn? I'm doing good. Got another wall. What am I going to learn from that? And that each little time is a stepping stone till you reach what it is you're going for.
Wonderful. Now, I want to stay with the book cover for a minute. Mm-hmm. Tell me the backstory of the cover design itself.
Didn't they do a great job? So, in the cover, what you see is Chicago in the 1920s. And I love the way the illustrator did this, who specializes in covers, did this. And then he put in my grandma's picture. But it really, just looking at the cover, it takes you back, because you see the horse and buggies, and you see the cars. And so there's that whole, technology hitting each other with the time change. And yet still, the skyscrapers were brand new, and you certainly had a few skyscrapers in Tulsa, but you certainly didn't have them as large as Chicago. So it was I'm really glad they showed that in the cover.
Now, I'm always curious to know, what was the process from you having this vision of the cover in your head and getting that idea across to the illustrator and him nailing it?
Well, first of all, it was the same person who did Rise, A Girl Struggle for More. And this is published by OC Publishing, by the way. And Anne, the publisher, is phenomenal. She and I would talk about the cover and what I envisioned. And then she would speak to the illustrator and carry that through. And so I basically, just shared with her how I wanted the cover to draw people into that time period. And so she was able to take it from there. So I really give a lot of credit to Anne and the illustrator more than anything.
Wonderful. Now, you've had such a rich and varied, career. You've worked in the musical theater. You do live streaming. How would you say have these experiences influenced your storytelling?
I think having these various opportunities gives me a chance to develop characters that would take in some of these things that I've done and bring them to life. So I have some book stories really, and hopefully they'll become books that you'll see some of those characters and you'll go, that's Sarah Jane's Diann.
Oh my goodness. Now, you've you've written over a span of many years. Are there any current trends in children's literature or young adult fiction that excites you?
Yes, I love Pete the cat. Pete the cat's so adorable. I love the poetry to it, and I have such respect for anyone who has a children's book that has a rhyme to it because I'm not good at rhyming. So I just think that's just an absolute true gift. And I have any respect for an author who, again, inspires parents, loved ones that are reading to their kiddos to have peace and love and they go to sleep knowing that tomorrow's going to be a great day too. But I'm really loving the classics still, like Polar Express, so great, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Diane, how do you approach, and I know this is different for every author, so how do you approach character development so that your protagonists are not only memorable but also relatable to your readers?
It's very good. A lot of times I go ahead and put a person that I know that has that personality and I use their name and then I edit their name out and give it a different name so that I can remember how that person was. Because generally, I would say that different authors that I've spoken to are like me. They get a character that they've actually experienced or someone's told them about and they feel they know them, and that way you can be true to the story and to that person. Does that make sense? But you have to make sure you take that name out or you'll be in lots of trouble.
Yes, it absolutely does make sense.
So,
What's next for you as an author? Can readers expect more adventures from Ruby, or are you going in a different direction?
I'm going in a different direction. I promised my mom I would stop my grandmother's life right there. Though my brothers say, "Oh no, it's the best is to come." What happened to grandma? But I don't know. Maybe I will. We'll see if I listen to my brothers. But right now, in a different direction. Like I said, I have this real need to write a love story that's really just sweet and kind and a little Doris Day is in me. So if y'all don't know who Doris Day is, Google her. She's just a phenomenal singer and her movies are just so sweet and loving. And the movie Tammy, actually many of my friends and I were talking about it at a Christmas cookie party the other day, and Gidget. And I just think today's generation could really use a Gidget or a Tammy with the Doris Day singing with her. Though Tammy does sing.
Absolutely.
And
Oh
then I
my goodness.
have some children's books coming out in the spring. So yay!
Congratulations. And I loved it. I don't think I've interviewed you about your children's books. I'd love to do that because I don't think we've talked about, we haven't delved into your children's books. So we should definitely pin that down for a future date. I'd love to do that. Now, with all the experiences that you've had over the years, If you were to start your writing career now, as opposed to a few years ago, what would you have done? What would you have done differently?
Wow. I'm not really sure I would do anything differently as far as just write, and reorganize. But I think I would probably continue, but differently. I just love writing about kindness and love. I think I wish I could afford to go back to Uganda and Kenya and really live there for a while and be with the people and maybe write a really lovely story about living there and the people. I would love that, because for people who haven't had a chance, if you don't mind giving me this time, if people haven't had a chance to go to Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, where I spent a lot of time. I've been into many other countries in Africa, but that's where I did most of the humanitarian work. There's something that just, you love the people. They're just so beautiful, and you just can't get enough of them. So that's probably what I'd do differently, is really concentrate on characters from there, because I love those people.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, if that ever becomes a reality, do reach out and let me know, and we'll see if we can get together.
It'd be so lovely to go down to South Africa. We my husband and I, we had always wanted to go do that. But we couldn't. A, work got in the way for him, but B, there were so many things to see. Like you and travel and explore, and it's like, how many months can we stay in South Africa? It's incredible.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it really is, it's very different, as we talked about earlier, living in a country as opposed to just visiting, it's not quite the same. Diann, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you again, and would love to have you back on the show anytime in the future. And to our amazing audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Diann today, please go and grab a copy of Ruby Takes Chicago. It's available on Amazon. And we look forward to hearing some more incredible stories from Diann Floyd Boehm in future. So please join us next time on Books with Bridgetti, where we continue sparking inspiration one page at a time. Take care and goodbye for now. Thank you for joining us on Books with Bridgetti. Join us next time for industry experts and award-winning authors.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months. And this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids like to keep called bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It's fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.